Welcome to Tangled and Splattered, where we make so many things we need to crochet tote bags to hold it all. Today's inspiration was a viewer request for a tote bag. I can never have enough tote bags, so I was happy to oblige. Our materials today include our trusty cotton yarn that we've used before. This is the exact yarn that we used for the crochet pot holders. This is Peaches and Cream, and I will add the size of the crochet hook in the description later. We also have our pumpkin spice cold brew coffee with all of the creamer. It's fall. I cannot get enough. It's actually a problem. So I started with 2 large black squares. We're going to call these squares the face. I don't have the exact dimensions or stitch count for these squares since we're not doing the pattern thing, but generally I just fold down the corners to see if the length of the rows matches closely enough with the length of the stitches across. For the second square, I loosely use the first square to try to make them the same size. Again, not counting stitches or rows, just trying to get them to be about the same. All right, so getting into it, we start with one face and make what is essentially a slip stitch up the side following the row. This is going to be the outer part of the handle. I've tried a few different ways for crocheting a handle like this, and because the first part of the handle is the chain, it becomes a little tighter, and the handle seems to feel better when that chain part is the outer part of the handle. For handles, there are a few different ways you can make them. The method I'm using in this video uses the direction of the single crochets to create long finger-like stitches that go down the length of the face of the tote bag, and they meet up at the top to single crochets to make a nice sturdy handle. You can make the handle as thick or as thin as you'd like. So I did make a deliberate choice to first crochet the handles onto the 2 square faces. This is because after you've crocheted the sides and faces together, it is a lot more material to work around. This is the first time I actually did it using this method, and it works so much better for me. I added the handles to 1 square before I started recording to make sure that I liked how it would turn out. And we're going to use that one to try to get everything to loosely match the second square face. You'll also see that when choosing which direction the face is going to be, I wanted my rows of that single crochet to face vertically instead of horizontally. I have done it horizontally in the past, which is generally kind of how you look at the bag while you're crocheting it. But I found that to be much more difficult to get those finger-like handle rows to be straight. So having this face in the vertical direction helps keep those lines straight. And of course, it's not a requirement. It's just something that I wanted for this bag when I made it. So next we continue with the slip stitch through the whole length of the face of the bag, and we get eventually to the other end of it, and that is where we are going to make a chain, and we want that chain to be the length that we want the handle. Again, I wanted this to be a handheld bag, but if you want it to be a shoulder bag, then you want to measure appropriately, making the chain a bit longer. If it is going to be a shoulder bag, you might also want those straps to start a bit further out from the center instead of having it closer to the center like for this handbag. Since the second face of the bag is the one I'm working on, I do like to measure it against the other handle to make sure that they match. There may be places and times where having a mismatched handle works, but that wasn't something that I was trying to figure out with this project. You'll notice often with my crocheting that rather than sewing in the ends at the end of the project, that I often prefer to crochet in the ends as I'm making the project and only sew in the ends that we're left with at the very end. This doesn't always give very perfect results, but I find sewing in the ends to be tedious work that I do not enjoy as much. And so I avoid it wherever I can. I like to do that. If you like having a cleaner look on your work, then you're welcome to sew in the ends in a cleaner way after you've completed the rest of the project. At the end of making the chain for the handle, we need to connect it to the other side of the face. We use the first square again to measure where the chain should be connected, counting from the outside in. And when we find where we want it connected, we'll mark it here using whatever method works for you, because my memory is like that of a goldfish. And then you'll want to do a slip stitch on the other side of the bag than what we started with. So if you were doing a slip stitch on one side, then you flip the bag over to do the slip stitch on the other side. That's the type of symmetry that I was looking for in this bag, but if you want the symmetry of your bag to be different, then you are welcome to keep doing the slip stitch on the same side of the bag as the first row. The whole point is do what you want for this bag. I hope that watching this inspires you and that you want to create something that's unique to you and your style. Today's colors are partially inspired by Halloween. There are a lot of skeleton decorations in our neighborhood now. One of my favorite ones is the skeleton decoration that is like a huge, massive skeleton that looks like a giant with like a giant, maybe Clifford the Big Red Dog type skeleton puppy. It's just so cute. I love the dog. The first time I walked our dogs by that, they got very upset because they don't like walking by other dogs and they thought that this skeleton dog was a real dog. It was cute and also a little alarming because we had to deal with that. Um Anyhow, the way that this comes together definitely gives skeleton vibes and I love it. You know, we're getting closer to Halloween. The temperatures have finally cooled down and they've cooled down enough for sweater weather and I'm here for it. I love sweaters. When you get to the end of the row for the slip stitches, you'll want to chain one and then turn your work. And you definitely need to pull out the tangles from your yarn. Yeah, so again, when you get to the end of the row, you want to chain one, then you'll want to turn your work and do those same slip stitches in the next row. And that's going to be moving towards the center of the face of your tote bag. And you'll want to do that same slip stitch all the way back up the face of the tote bag. Honestly, I had to look really closely at this while I was doing it to make sure I actually got my stitches in the next row and wasn't going in the same row and I wasn't skipping a row because I always feel a little bit unsure of myself when I'm getting through this. But you can see here that I looked at the other one and saw that it looked similar. And so then I was able to keep going with those slip stitches. At the top of the bag, when you're back to your chain, what you'll need to do is connect to that chain and start doing a single crochet across each of the chains to create that handle. When you get to the last single crochet for the chain, then you'll need to connect back to the face in the very next row prior, the one that's more towards the center using a slip stitch and then facing again the opposite direction of the prior slip stitch row. So while you're doing that, you may have to move your yarn back and forth because the yarn will end up on different sides of the handle. That's totally normal and it's fine. The handle hopefully you made is big enough to be able to just pass that yarn through the handle while you're going back and forth with this pattern. Well, I guess it's not a pattern. Then you'll continue to repeat this knot pattern part of crocheting this tote bag over and over until the handle is the width that you're looking for. I personally find that 6 rows is really the minimum that I'm comfortable with for a handle. Anything less than that doesn't really feel very sturdy to me. More rows certainly could make it feel more secure, but you'll need to decide how you want it to feel in your hand or on your shoulder. I wanted to share some of my thoughts for the prep work I did on this tote bag and some of the thoughts I have about crocheting in general. I have found what works really well for me and what doesn't work well for me from all of the bags that I've made. I've mentioned before that I don't really follow patterns. I may get inspiration from patterns that I've seen online, but typically I find that I enjoy crocheting a lot more if I am not stuck counting stitches and rows. Honestly, I really just cannot pay attention long enough for all of the counting for some of these patterns. So I kind of wing it. I also find that sometimes the stitches and rows end up giving uneven results, even if you are counting your stitches. So for me, it's really about crocheting things to approximate sizes and going from there. I find the single crochet seems to provide the most structure and sturdiness for a tote bag like this. If you're just using this video as inspiration and don't want to do a single crochet for the whole bag, I would recommend that you use the single crochet for at least the bottom portion of the bag and the top portion of the bag with the handles. I will add that I have a few bags that I've made with both single crochet, double crochet, and different stitches with combinations of the two. The bags that I feel are holding up the best over time for carrying groceries are the ones that I created using single crochets. It does take more time to finish, and perhaps if you're carrying lighter items like yarn or bread, you may be able to get away with a looser stitch, but I'd still recommend a single stitch at the bottom and top for the support structure. I feel like that will give you the best results. And now we're going to zoom through this section and we'll get to our last row where we will tie off our loose end, cutting it off, and get the sides and faces ready to crochet together. So for the sides and bottom, I made a nice long rectangle with the width, the size that I wanted my tote to be. If you want a really wide bag, you can make it wider. The point here isn't a pattern. Make it as wide or not wide as you want. Make it whatever colors you want. Whatever you want your bag to be, this is really a gut feel for how big you want your bag. And if you are making it wider, I would recommend making sure that your handles are sized appropriately in order to handle the extra width and potentially the added weight that your tote bag may hold. So just make sure that you crochet the rectangle to fit around 3 of the 4 sides of the 2 rectangles that are the face of the bag. So now our 2 faces are ready. The side of the bag is ready, and we just need to put everything together. So here, I generally think a single crochet is sufficient for tying together the sides. I like the look of an exposed corner in my crochet projects. I really haven't tried to make a bag with an invisible seam at this point. That said, I wanted it to be a little extra sturdy, so I am going to be using both the white and the black yarn. So it's 2 threads of yarn holding it together instead of just one. Using the black and white also, I feel like it's going to kind of blend those colors together between the face and the side panel. I think my biggest concern if I were to try to do an invisible seam would be how well does it hold up when it's carrying my groceries. If you find a nice sturdy invisible seam method, I would be happy to look at it and give it a try sometime. But using this method really makes it feel very sturdy to me. I like the way it looks, and I am happy to keep crocheting my seams together like this. So we start with one face and the end of the side panel and put it together so that we can crochet it together. We want 3 sides of the square of the face to be connected to the side panel. So I was using the same hook for doing this connection that I used throughout the project. Essentially just poking the hook through wherever it fits on the sides for both the face and the side panel and doing a single crochet through it. Sometimes this will line up really nicely with the row of a stitch, and other times it will not. This part requires a little bit of flexibility and creativity to get those stitches evenly spaced. I'm not too concerned with making it perfect. I really just wing it the whole length of this part of the project. So we do this all the way down one side, and eventually when we get to the corner, what we'll do is we'll do a single crochet right at the corner. We'll chain one, and then we do another crochet, but for the second crochet, the second single crochet, we want to use the same hole that the face used, but we want to use the next hole that the side panel has, the white side panel, essentially creating that corner for the side panel. So you'll see us kind of getting around to that corner here shortly, and you can see when it slows down that we'll be doing that single crochet. We'll do the chain one, and then we'll do that other single crochet just like we described. Now we're just going to keep going along the bottom row after getting through this corner, doing the same single crochet stitches on the whole edge. At the next corner, we'll handle that corner the same way we handled the first corner, and then we'll go all the way up the third side, connecting the side piece to the face. When I get to the end of the third side, I ended up realizing that the side panel was a little bit too long, and I'll have you watch as I figure out what to do when that side panel is too long. But essentially, I had originally planned to have a flexible finish by not finishing one of the ends. And by the time I got to the end, I realized that I started connecting the faces to the side panel with the unfinished end instead of leaving the unfinished end for the other end, which means I just really needed to use my imagination for how to finish the connection and to not let it look like a massive fail and to not be really kind of disappointed in the project that I made. Um, so it's a risk that I take by not using patterns. And frankly, it's a risk that I'm generally willing to take. There's many different ways you can make a tote bag like this, and this is the way I chose to make it. Instead of making 6 individual panels and measuring things perfectly, I wanted to keep it a little bit more simple, and this is the way I made it. So you can see here that my fix for the too long side panel is to just fold it in and crochet it folded like that. So now what happens is I'm crocheting 3 different, essentially the width of 3 different panels instead of 2 different panels. That's okay. I fold it in. It's not that serious. I'm not trying to sell this work. I'm not boasting about what a great job I did. I made a bag out of yarn, and I use that bag to put my groceries in and bring my groceries home. I'm treating it with the seriousness it deserves, which is very little. It's a bag. It doesn't need to be that serious. So after you do this, you can see I'm tying my ends here. And the last thing to do is to connect the other face to the other side of the edge of the side panel. And after you get that all connected, then you can start putting your stuff in your bag. Yay! So here I am realizing that, yeah, the end that I made to be flexible was crocheted to the wrong end. So I clip it off, I tie it off, and now I am crocheting the other side of the bag, and we will do a little bit of a zoomies. Get the zoomies and get through this side of it. And you see I'm starting on the same side that I started the first connection for the panel. And you'll see here again, I'm crocheting the ends in with it. So now we get to the other end where we have to do that fold and crochet through the width of the 3 different kind of panels, if you will, with that folded piece in there. And then we finish it off. This is it. This is the bag. So that's how you make it. That's how I made it, and maybe that's how you'll make it too. The bag will carry things. It will carry the yarn that you make for your next project. It can carry your groceries. It can be used to carry the massive amounts of pride that you have every time you get a compliment on the bags that you crocheted, which is bound to happen whenever you bring this bag to your local co-op. Thank you for watching. Let me know what else you'd like me to crochet. If you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a like and follow to see my next video where I will be crocheting a Halloween or pumpkin themed infinity scarf. I will teach you my tips and tricks for crocheting an infinity scarf, or what I like to call a Mobius scarf because I am a math nerd. Thank you again.